There is a strange pattern you begin to notice once you understand power. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful. The person constantly explaining themselves, demanding respect, forcing attention, arguing endlessly, and trying to dominate every conversation, usually has the least control. Meanwhile, the truly influential person often speaks less. They observe more, react less, move carefully, and somehow, without trying too hard, people naturally pay attention to them. This is what many people never understand about influence. Real power is not always loud. Sometimes real power is quiet. This is the fourth lesson. Silent leverage, creating influence through silence, consistency, positioning, and emotional control instead of force. Weak people try to control attention. Strong people control presence. Weak people demand validation. Strong people build value. Weak people chase authority. Strong people become undeniable over time. That is silent leverage. And once you understand it, you start seeing it everywhere. Think about conversations. Most people are terrified of silence. The moment a conversation becomes quiet, they rush to fill the gap. They over-explain, overshare, nervously justify themselves, reveal too much, talk just to reduce discomfort. But the person who is comfortable with silence immediately gains an advantage. Because silence creates pressure. Imagine asking someone a difficult question. Then instead of speaking again, instead of rescuing them from discomfort, you simply stay calm and wait. Something fascinating happens. Most people begin talking more than they intended. They start filling the silence, explaining themselves, revealing emotions, giving away information, not because you forced them to, but because silence quietly created tension. This is one of the oldest forms of psychological leverage. The person least afraid of silence often controls the emotional direction of the interaction. That does not mean becoming cold or manipulative. It means understanding that calmness itself creates influence. Emotionally reactive people constantly give away their position, but emotionally grounded people make others lean in. There is a reason experienced negotiators pause before responding. There is a reason powerful interviewers let silence linger after difficult questions. There is a reason highly respected leaders rarely rush to speak first. Because silence forces people to reveal themselves. And the ability to remain composed inside silence signals confidence. Think about insecure people. They constantly need reassurance. They need to prove they matter. Need to prove they are smart. Need to prove they are successful. Need to prove they are right. And because of that, they unintentionally communicate weakness. Confident people do not need constant confirmation. They let their actions speak slowly over time. This is where many people misunderstand power completely. They think influence comes from appearing dominant. But real influence often comes from emotional stability. The person who loses emotional control first usually loses leverage first. If someone can easily provoke you, they can control your reactions. If someone can pull you into endless arguments, they control your focus. If someone can make you desperately defend yourself, they control your emotional state. That is why emotionally disciplined people appear powerful without trying. Because they do not react to every little thing. They choose their responses carefully. And this becomes incredibly important in modern life. Today, people are rewarded for visibility. Everyone is posting opinions, defending themselves publicly, trying to appear important, trying to appear successful, trying to appear smarter than everyone else. But there is a hidden danger in constantly broadcasting yourself. When you constantly seek attention, you become dependent on it. And dependence weakens leverage. The strongest people are often the least desperate to be seen. They focus on building substance quietly. They improve their skills, build their reputation, keep their promises, create value consistently. Then eventually, attention comes to them naturally. This is silent leverage in career. There are employees who constantly talk about how valuable they are. Then there are employees who quietly solve problems every single week. Guess who becomes irreplaceable over time? Not the loudest person, the most reliable one. Consistency creates invisible authority. A person who delivers results over and over again no longer needs to advertise themselves constantly. People begin trusting them automatically. And trust is one of the most powerful forms of leverage in existence. Because once people trust you, opportunities begin moving toward you without force. This applies to relationships too. Many people think attraction is created through intensity. Constant texting, constant explaining, constant emotional pressure, constant need for reassurance. But emotional desperation destroys mystery. And mystery creates psychological space. The people who create the strongest presence are often those who remain emotionally centered. They do not chase aggressively. They do not force connection. They show up consistently, act genuinely, keep their word, remain calm under pressure, and over time, people begin respecting them deeply. Because stability feels rare, especially in a world addicted to emotional chaos. Think about someone you truly admire. Usually, it is not because they talk the most. It is because their behavior feels grounded. You know what to expect from them. They remain calm during pressure. They remain disciplined during difficulty. They remain respectful during conflict. That emotional consistency creates gravity. People trust emotional stability, and trust creates influence far more effectively than intimidation ever will. Silent leverage also comes from positioning. Weak people try to force outcomes directly. Strong people position themselves strategically and let pressure build naturally. For example, a desperate person begs for respect. A powerful person builds a life, reputation, and standard that naturally commands respect. A desperate company constantly advertises itself loudly. A respected company develops such consistent quality that customers recommend it automatically. A desperate individual argues constantly online trying to win every debate. A powerful individual invests energy into building real-world results. One seeks immediate validation. The other builds long-term leverage. This distinction changes everything, because the strongest leverage often comes from what you do repeatedly, not what you say emotionally. Anyone can make promises. Few people can maintain discipline quietly for years. And that is what creates true authority. There is also another reason silence creates power. Silence makes people curious. When someone constantly explains every thought, every emotion, every opinion, there is nothing left for people to discover. But when someone speaks carefully and intentionally, people naturally pay closer attention. Scarcity increases value. This applies psychologically too. The more selective your words become, the more weight they carry. That is why calm people often appear wiser. Not because they know everything, but because they do not waste energy speaking unnecessarily. They understand timing, and timing is one of the most underestimated forms of intelligence. Weak people react immediately. Strong people observe first. Weak people panic under pressure. Strong people slow down under pressure. Weak people feel the need to answer instantly. Strong people allow themselves space to think. That pause creates power, because emotional control creates clarity, and clarity creates better decisions. This is especially important during conflict. Most arguments escalate because both people react emotionally at the same time. One emotional reaction triggers another, then another, then another. Soon the conversation is no longer about truth. It becomes about ego protection. But the person who stays calm changes the emotional structure of the interaction. Calmness disrupts emotional chaos. This does not mean silence is always the answer. Sometimes you must speak clearly. Sometimes you must set boundaries. Sometimes you must confront problems directly. But silent leverage means you do not react impulsively. You act intentionally. There is a huge difference. One of the strongest forms of leverage is becoming difficult to emotionally destabilize. Because emotionally unpredictable people are exhausting. But emotionally disciplined people create safety. People trust those who remain composed. This is why highly respected leaders are often calmer during crisis than everyone else around them. While others panic, they focus. While others react emotionally, they analyze. While others rush to prove something, they concentrate on solutions. That emotional steadiness creates authority automatically. People naturally follow stability during uncertainty. Now here is the deeper truth most people miss. Silent leverage is not passive. It is strategic patience. A weak person stays silent because they are afraid. A powerful person stays silent because they are observing. A weak person avoids action. A powerful person waits for the right moment to act decisively. That difference matters. Silent leverage does not mean becoming invisible. It means understanding that constant noise is not the same thing as influence. In fact, many people use noise to hide insecurity. People who constantly announce their success often need validation. People who constantly display dominance often fear losing control. People who constantly seek attention often feel invisible internally. But truly grounded individuals do not need to perform power constantly. Because real confidence feels no urgency to prove itself every second. Think about nature. The ocean does not scream to prove its power. A mountain does not argue for respect. The sun does not demand attention. Their presence alone creates impact. Humans are similar. The people with the strongest internal foundation often create the strongest external presence. Not through force, but through consistency. This becomes extremely important in business. Many entrepreneurs waste energy trying to look successful instead of becoming valuable. They chase appearance before substance. But sustainable influence is built differently. Quietly, patiently, repeatedly. Every promise kept builds leverage. Every skill mastered builds leverage. Every emotional reaction controlled builds leverage. Every difficult moment handled with composure builds leverage. Over time, these small and visible actions compound into authority. And eventually, people begin feeling your value before you even speak. That is real presence. Not attention, presence. Attention is temporary. Presence changes the emotional atmosphere of a room. There are people who walk into a room loudly demanding attention. Then there are people who walk into a room quietly, and somehow everyone notices them anyway. Why? Because calm confidence feels powerful. It signals internal certainty. And certainty influences people deeply. Humans naturally trust people who seem emotionally anchored. That is why desperation repels. Desperation communicates instability. Neediness communicates lack. Emotional chasing communicates fear, but grounded people communicate abundance. Not necessarily financial abundance, but emotional abundance. They do not need every person to like them. Do not need every argument to go their way. Do not need instant validation. And because they are not emotionally desperate, people feel safer around them. Silent leverage also protects your energy. One of the biggest mistakes people make is reacting to everything. Every criticism, every insult, every disagreement, every opinion. But reacting to everything gives your attention away constantly. Attention is power. Where your attention goes, your emotional energy follows. Wise people protect that energy carefully. Not every battle deserves a response. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Not every opinion deserves emotional investment. Sometimes the strongest move is staying focused while others become distracted. This is extremely difficult for emotionally reactive people. Because ego wants immediate defense. Ego wants to win publicly. Ego wants recognition instantly. But long-term influence belongs to disciplined people. The people who can delay emotional gratification often build the strongest positions over time. That is leverage. Now, this does not mean becoming emotionally disconnected. Some people misuse these ideas and become emotionally cold, distant, or manipulative. That is not strength. True silent leverage still includes warmth, integrity, and empathy. The goal is not to intimidate people. The goal is to become emotionally stable enough that your presence speaks louder than your insecurity. That is completely different. A truly powerful person does not constantly create fear. They create trust. Because trust lasts longer than intimidation. And this is the final lesson many people eventually learn too late. You do not need to force people to recognize your value. If you constantly improve yourself, remain disciplined, create results, and move with emotional control, eventually your position begins speaking for itself. Quietly, naturally, powerfully. The loudest people may get attention first. But the calmest, most consistent, most emotionally disciplined people usually earn something far more valuable in the long run. Respect. And respect is one of the few forms of influence that cannot be faked. So stop trying to scream your worth into the world. Stop trying to force recognition. Stop exhausting yourself proving things to people who were never paying attention anyway. Instead, build quietly, observe carefully, speak intentionally, keep your promises, control your emotions, improve consistently, and let time become your amplifier. Because real leverage does not beg. Real leverage becomes undeniable.